My name is Giordano, and I've been working in the Postgres community since 2017. And even before that, I worked on open source. I led the effort to open source the Solaris operating systems back at Sun Microsystems back in the day. I host a podcast called Talking Postgres. Hopefully you've heard of it. And I work on the Postgres team at Microsoft. And specifically in the bottom right corner, we have a lot of things going on, but I focus my time on the Postgres community and the open source project. Are you able to get to the PDF? On your way. Awesome. Okay. And you can't see any of these slides. I'm saying bottom right and top left, and none of that's visible to you. Only I can see it. But it looks really nice. The slides are beautiful. They're very well designed. Let's see. I'm still going to keep going. So last year in Athens, I gave a talk that's very similar to this one, and it was about contributions to Postgres 17. And how many of you were at PGConf EU last year in Athens? Awesome. So some of you got to experience the wonderfulness that was that year's event. And this year, obviously, we're going to focus on Postgres 18. And I've also made efforts to make the talk even better this year by making sure that my slides can't present, for example. That was an unexpected pleasure. All right, let's just take this off. I guess I can click with this, though, can't I? Oh, nice. That looks beautiful. And is it going to project?
We'll see.
What is this?
Power for this.
Power is important, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so that goes in here, like that?
You're good.
Okay. All right. So is it sharing? We're going to get there. It's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. Has this ever happened to any of you? Have you ever had technical issues when giving a presentation? Okay, so I'm not the only one. One time I was at a conference in Portland, Maine, which is a beautiful place to host a conference, by the way. And this incredible speaker, for whatever reason, the projector went on the blitz during her talk, and she gave the entire talk without any slides at all. And I don't know how she did it, but she remembered everything. And the narrative made sense, and it was pretty exciting. Now, how many of you have heard of a Postgres committer named Daniel Gustafsson? Cool, so more than half the people in the room. He is my co-collaborator on this talk. I'm the only one here presenting, but he did a lot of the research with me in the background about Postgres 18. There was also another woman on my team named Min Wen who did a lot of data collection for us as well, which is pretty cool. So I wanted to give a shout out to them. And there would be a beautiful picture of Daniel that would be showing on the screen for those of you who don't know him already. He's from Sweden, and he's just a delightful human being. Yes?
Have you uploaded the slides already?
Oh, that's a really good idea.
Then we can just look at the slides.
Yeah.
On your own device.
Yeah, on your own devices, if the projector's not working. So I think it's a broken projector if you can't project either, right? I don't know. Okay.
Sample size is too small.
Sample size is too small to conclude this. All right, I'm still doing logistics, so they still have time to fix this. The time frame for the Postgres 18 contribution analysis that we did is about 15 months long. So we started from the day that Michael Paquier, another Postgres committer, actually created the 18 development space where committers were going to be doing the work. And so that was June 30th, 2024. And then we had to pick the end date for our collection before we knew when it was going to GA. So we just picked the end of September, September 30th, 2025. And then we made one exception, which is we included this annual development conference called PGConf.dev that was in Vancouver, Canada in 2024 in May. And we included that in the time frame as well, because there's so much collaboration and development work and negotiation that happens at PGConf.dev in that time frame. If you can't make this work, oh, never mind. You can make it work. May I be the first one to congratulate you?
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. And thank you.
You went full screen, yeah.
Okay, I went full screen. This is so exciting. I love it. Okay. Okay, technology. Okay, so how do I project? I go like this. Okay, so these were the beautiful slides. We're gonna go really fast. That's about me. This is about the work streams. This is the cover of the slide from last year with a QR code to get to the slides. over 1,500 people. There's Daniel Gustafsson. Big shout out to my co-collaborator. And no, I'm still using this. Yeah, if you need it for pictures, don't worry, I'll move out of the way. So let's see. Oh, I'm doing this in a different order now. This talk builds on top of an annual blog post that Robert Haas publishes that's pretty popular. It's called Who Contributed to Postgres Development in the Previous Year. He usually publishes in January, and it's pretty awesome. But as we were reading it last year, Daniel Gustafsson and I started to wonder, like, what about new code contributors? What about other types of contribution to Postgres beyond code? And we wanted to look at the entire 15 months. And what about recognition? I firmly believe that recognizing people for their work causes them to do more of that work that they're being awarded for or recognized for. So these are the questions that we had. And we decided to create a talk. And this is the 18 version. And there's 4 questions that if you answer yes to any one of these questions, then this talk is probably for you. If you don't care about any of these questions, it will not hurt my feelings if you get up and walk out of the room right now, especially with all the technical difficulties that I've had. But the first is, maybe you're wondering, how do I contribute to Postgres? Maybe you're wondering, how do I do it in new ways that I haven't done before? Secondly, maybe you've never gotten one of those Postgres challenge coins, those release coins that are pretty cool. You see people post pictures of on social media. The Postgres 18 coins, I don't believe they've come out yet, but you might be wondering about that. Or maybe you're the kind of person who likes to buy someone a beer to say thank you, or a coffee if they don't drink beer. And so that's what the third question is. And the fourth one is, maybe you're the kind of person, and Stacy is probably this kind of person, who thinks about how to structure a healthy and vibrant open source ecosystem, and how do incentives change behavior, and can recognition help make the project even grow more than it already is. All right, so I'm clicking the wrong things here. So as I was getting ready, I talked to Boris about marathons, and don't ask me why. I don't know why we started talking about marathons. How many of you have run a marathon, incidentally? Wow. Okay, so Boris has run one. Maybe that's why we were talking about it. And people run them for lots of different reasons. But one reason that many people share in common is to get that medal. And maybe you hang it up on the wall in your office, or maybe it's just hiding in a drawer, and you pull it out from time to time and look at it and reflect back on that achievement. I don't know why I keep clicking this. That's just not working for me. All right, so we're going to walk through these 5 different areas of contribution. We're going to look at governance. We're going to look at people who hack on code and docs. We're going to look at people who share their expertise, or people who organize places for knowledge sharing. I'm not quite tall enough, even though I wore big heels, like this conference, for example. And then also financial contributors, because that matters a lot too. And to do this analysis, Daniel built a tool called Ekora. I think I pronounced that right in Swedish. It means squirrel, to do the git commit log analysis. But we also looked at a ton of other public information sources, things that were published. A lot of things on PostgreSQL.org, but mailing lists, conference websites, YouTube videos, Google Summer of Code, the Postgres Weekly newsletter, PostgreScontrib.org. You know, we looked in a lot of places, which was hard, dealing with all this different type of data where, you know, some conferences publish all the data we needed and some conferences don't. They keep their sponsorship prospectus secret and they don't publish it online. So, you know, we had challenges. And I already told you about the time frame starting with June 30th, which means when it comes to conferences, for example, 15 months, anything that is in July, August, September, there's going to be 2 of them on here. So, Derek, I'm looking at you. PG Day Lowlands, there's 2 of them in our data. So, you know, that might not seem fair to people with conferences that happened in November or December, but it is what it is. So how many of you, now that we've looked at these 5 different areas and we've talked about the time frame, feel like you contributed to Postgres in one of these ways during Postgres 18? Cool. Well, hopefully you will see your name on one of these slides. But if you don't, just know that, you know, our data collection was really, really good, but maybe only 99% good. So maybe imperfect, and we might have had a few oversights. So we're going to start with those who help to govern. We'll look at the core team, committers, some of the board members for nonprofits, and committees really quickly. So these 7 people serve on the Postgres core team. And if you're not familiar, the core team they don't create a roadmap for the project, but they are a lot like a steering committee other than that. Bruce Momjian is sitting right here. He is one of these people that you should buy a beer for, or buy a coffee for. Their work on this is pretty invisible. And they do a lot of behind-the-scenes work. And at the same time, they have delegated a lot of day-to-day responsibilities to other committees and teams that we'll look at in just a minute. I put their company names next to them as well, and these names are current, like where they're currently employed, because their companies also, for the most part, support their work on the project. And so I thought it was important to give credit there as well. But they don't do this work at the behest of that company. You know, Andres, for example, is not pushing a Microsoft agenda. He's serving the open source project. All right, so how many Postgres committers are there? Now, these are people who have the commit bit, and there are 31. And this list is not in alphabetical order. It's listed by, let's correct me if I get this wrong. It's either the date of their first commit or the date they first became a committer, whichever is earlier. And Bruce was there at the founding of the open source project, which is why his name was first. He was there on the very first day. And the newest committer, who just became one earlier this year in April, is Jacob Champion. So shout out to him. His name is on the bottom right with an asterisk next to it. Thank you, Flora, for your laptop, by the way. Finally got around to being grateful. So I love maps, and I was really curious, like, how do these 31 committers spread out geographically? And I sometimes joke that there are more Postgres committers per capita in New Zealand than anywhere else in the world, and I think that math is correct. But it was also interesting to see there were 6 in Japan, and there were 3 in the Nordics. That's if Finland is considered Nordics, and I'll have to ask Keiki about that. There are a lot in Europe, a lot in the United States, but I didn't draw circles or lines around those different regions because this team works globally, regardless of company, regardless of country. They all work together. So yeah, that's just there for the interest factor. There are a bunch of recognized Postgres nonprofits, most of them focused on advocacy, education, training, outreach, helping the project grow, helping users get access to the information they need. And so these are the ones that are listed on the PostgreSQL.org site. I was talking to Tobias about the Swiss nonprofit, and they probably just need to do the work to request to be added to the PostgreSQL website, because they probably comply with the policy. There's a special recognized nonprofit policy that's published. PGCA in the upper right is a board that I serve on that protects the Postgres trademark and brand. And so our focus is global, not specific to a particular region. And if you are doing anything with a Postgres name and you didn't realize there was a trademark policy, be sure to check it out before you do anything. All right, and these are the people, the 29 people who served across these 6 boards. So I just want to give a shout out and thank them. A lot of the work they do is invisible, but it's important. And then I said there were these other teams and committees that the core team is kind of delegated, if you will, or farmed work out to. And there is a security team that is very serious about the work that they do. These 17 people, they respond to any security issues that get submitted. And 13 of these are committers, which I think tells you how seriously the committer group takes the topic of security. Another way of looking at it is that 40% of the Postgres committers are on the security team. So I reached out to Noah Mish to say, what should I say? I don't know what to say. So much of what you do is behind the curtain, and I'm not privy to the details. And he gave me this quote that is very serious, and I thought an apt quote for security, which is that the Postgres security team is your agent, and we succeed by resolving each vulnerability as a fiduciary for your data would. That sounds serious, right? And as it should be. All right, there's other committees as well. There's a funds group, there's a sponsor group. I'm not gonna dive into these right now. These are the current members though, and they deserve a thank you as well. One of the things that I want to mention, though, is the funds group does commission those coins that we talked about earlier, those Postgres release coins. And that effort is led by Mark Wong. So if you've ever gotten one and you really appreciate it and you ever have a chance to meet Mark, be sure to say thank you, because there's a lot of work involved in running this program and creating it. The people whose names are on the slide as well are those who assist on the project, and in particular with distribution, because they don't mail each coin individually. They kind of farm them out to geographies, and then people are responsible for getting it into people's hands in their region or country. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Scarlett Riggs, and her picture is also on the screen, because she designed that absolutely beautiful Postgres 17 coin that you can see on the right-hand side in the center. You can see it. Isn't that cool? The slides are visible. It's a beautiful coin, and I think it's a work of art. And the rumor is that Scarlett is also designing the Postgres 18 release coin. So I haven't seen it yet, but I can't wait. Maybe somebody will let me take a peek while I'm here. And then there's a contributors committee. So shout out to Christoph Berg and Joe Conway and Melanie Plagueman for the work that they're doing. And it is hard work to figure out who to add to the contributors list. And I know it's hard work because I had to do a blank ton of work to, gather all this information for this talk, and it's tedious and it's spread out all over the internet. They are also responsible for maintaining and improving the methodology that they use, and they have been doing a lot to improve it. So as evidenced by this list, there have been a whole bunch of announcements in the last year about people newly promoted to major contributors, as well as people added for the first time, in the most part, as significant contributors. So if you meet these people, maybe buy a beer or a coffee. Maybe some of you see your names on this list. Okay, show of hands. Who sees your name on this list, on this slide? Congratulations. Derek, isn't your name there too? Oh, not yet. Okay, you're staying in the background. All right. So I know that my name's on the right-hand side, and I was more delighted than I realized I would be when I got that email from Christoph Berg. I went home. I told my husband. I don't want to cry. It was really cool. It's really cool to get recognized. And one of the things about people who make this list is it's not just for one release. It's sustained, multi-year, multi-release kind of contributions. And I know that Melanie and Joe and Christoph are working really hard to be fair and to be inclusive and not just take the easy path, which is just to recognize the code contributors and the really obvious board members, but to look at all the different types of contribution that make for a healthy project. And one of the things that I think is so cool, one more thing, time frame glitch here. This is everybody who's been added since June 30th, 2024. So there were a few people who were just added a couple days ago. So I went ahead and included them on this list too. All right. And one of the contributor committee's plans is to create and issue these special coins that will go to you when you first get promoted to major contributor or first get promoted to significant contributor. And I think they're going to do that retroactively because these coins don't exist yet and have never existed. And I think this is really effing cool. So I'm glad. The design is, I think, still in draft, or maybe the front is designed, but the back isn't yet. And they have even more improvements coming in the future. And then there's code of conduct committees. I see a few people in this room who have served on either the main Postgres Code of Conduct Committee, which is on the left-hand side. All those people, those first 8 people, are ones who are serving right now. And there are some people who stepped down during this time frame, but served for part of it, and they're also on the left. And then on the right, I put names up there for anybody who served on a published Code of Conduct Committee for a specific event or conference. Some events don't have their own Code of Conduct. They just leverage the high-level Postgres Code of Conduct, which is totally fine, totally legit thing to do. But some events do have their own. And I also put a shout-out at the bottom for the 3 people, Flor and Pavlo, who I see in the room, and Celeste, who are doing, there you go, who are doing Code of Conduct at this conference, too.
4 people. They didn't get me on the website until a couple days ago.
Oh, okay. I created this slide a couple weeks ago. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I didn't notice, and then I pinged Magnus, and I'm like,
I will fix that before I publish. But Teresa, will you please remind me, because I might forget. You have my phone, so you can do something with it. Write it down. Okay, so now let's move on to people who hack on code. So I thought first we'd do a by the numbers look, and let's do this counterclockwise. There are over 3,000 commits in this release. almost 4,000 files changed. So 55% approximately of the files that comprise Postgres core. Now, I'm not talking about extensions, by the way. I'm not talking about tooling. I'm not talking about things in the ecosystem. I'm just talking about Postgres core. Over 400,000 lines of code changed out of approximately 850,000 lines of code. Obviously, we already know it's for 15 months. You might not know there were over 35,000 emails sent to the PGCQL hackers mailing list in this 15-month time frame for Postgres 18. That's a lot of email. And it's a lot of email. And everybody here knows how much email takes to compose, especially if it needs to be articulate and logical and clear. And so you can see there's a lot of work involved in that. 279 code and doc authors in this release. And that's up 20% versus Postgres 17. And of those 279, 85 of them did their first time code authorship, which I think is really awesome. And that's up 40% from Postgres 17. So it's kind of interesting to look at it by the numbers. And for some reason, when I showed this Mondrian-inspired chart to Daniel, he's like, that reminds me of that really famous red and blue chair. So I don't know why this is in the talk, but I thought, wow, that's an interesting chair. Does anyone know how to say this? Okay. Gerrit Rietveld. Gerrit Rietveld chair? Okay, Celeste in the audience is telling us how this chair is in the same time frame as Mondrian, so no wonder there's a connection, and it's a very, very famous chair. All right, so these are the 279 people. So if you authored or co-authored a commit to Postgres core or documentation in this time frame, your name should be on this chart, which is, I just did it. Well, I tried to make it beautiful, too, because I think it's really, really important, the work that these people did. And for the 85 people who did their first time ever code authorship, there you go. These are the 85 people who I hope feel really good about it. I know when I had Heikki Liinakengas on the podcast, he talked about his origin story with Postgres, and he talked about how good it felt when his first commits that he authored made it in. He commented that the commits didn't look anything like what he first submitted to Tom Lane, and there was a lot of enhancement and change along the way before the commit actually went through, but it was still a really good feeling, and he was proud of it. Now, did any of the 61 first-time code authors in Postgres 17 also author code in Postgres 18? And the answer is yes, 20 of them. So that's about 33%, which you might think is a good number. You might think, oh, why isn't it higher? Or you might think, oh, that's higher than I expected. But it is food for thought. Like, and how do we make sure when newcomers come in and they make a contribution, if they're interested in continuing with the project, how do we inspire that to happen? So then I looked at how many commits, well, Daniel and I together looked at how many commits did each of these 279 code authors contribute to. And sure enough, as you might imagine, like the vast majority of people just contributed to between 1 and 9 commits. But on the right, in the long tail, you can see there were 35 people who contributed more than 21 commits each, which totaled like 2,500. So the vast majority of commits in the release. And so who are those 35 people? Well, I put them on this list. And so they are in descending order based on the total number of commits in the Postgres 18 release. And it's probably no surprise you've maybe heard that Tom Lane can be rather prolific. And so it's probably not a surprise that Tom Lane is on there. I put people's companies next to them as well because their companies oftentimes pay them to work full-time on the open source project. And if a company was acquired during this time frame of Postgres 18, I put the new acquiring company's name. So next to Tom Lane, it doesn't say Crunchy Data, it says Snowflake. Or next to Heikki Liinakengas, it doesn't say Neon, it says Databricks, for example. So big shout out, lots of coffee, lots of beer, lots of thanks to these people. And then I looked at, did some committers review a lot more commits versus authored? And that's important because, you know, nothing gets in without really good reviews. We have, like, the team has processes in place to make sure that the quality of commits is high. And so the emit Capella number at the top, talk about an outlier. I thought that was pretty amazing. That, you know, what is it, 18x the number of reviews versus the number of commits. But everybody who reviewed more than twice as much as they authored in terms of commits is on this list in descending order based on the percentage, the ratio. So big shout out to these people. I mean, David Johnston, Tomasz Vondra, Michael Paquier, just a lot of good work represented here. And I think reviews matter. So then we looked at, well, how many people are involved per commit? And we don't exactly know. But we do know the number of people mentioned in each of the 3,043 commits. And so that's what this distribution slide attempts to represent. And interestingly, while the numbers are a little bit different, the shape of the slide is almost exactly the same as it was in Postgres 17. But there is one thing that's different in version 18, which is the committers have gotten really, really good at consistently putting all the attribution in their commit messages. So they're doing a much better job indicating who the co-authors are, who the reviewers are, not just on the first commit, but if there are follow-ons in those as well. And so that was super helpful in generating data. And then we looked at what is cycle time. From the time between the first email discussion on PGSQL hackers to when the commit happened in Postgres 18. And the reason we looked at this is you'll hear rumors, urban myths, if you will, that say, oh, don't go work on Postgres. It takes 5 years to get anything integrated into that project. Well, this slide will tell you that that's not true. Now, this doesn't represent everything because not every email thread is linked to in the commit messages. So we definitely couldn't find all the connective tissue in generating this, but I still think it tells you that there's a lot of room to make a difference in a time frame that is not just less than 1 year, but less than 6 months even. Daniel thought this was the most important slide in the entire talk, but I would argue with him. I think there's other very important slides too. So how many commits done on behalf of others? So the money column here is the one I circled in green, and the percentages. And I only included people here who had done 40 or more commits and 30% or more on behalf of others. Behalf of others means that you were not the sole author. If you were a co-author with 3 other people, then I counted it in this math. So I thought this was interesting. And then we also looked at other ways people are hacking on the code. And we looked at the build farm, for example. And most of you, if you didn't know, Andrew Dunstan is kind of the face of this project. And during the development of Postgres 18, there were over 120,000 runs of builds on 193 separate animals. An animal is a server. It makes sense in this context because a farm has animals, apparently. That's the connection. And there were over 229 million seconds spent building various versions of Postgres 18 during the development cycle. He does have 15,000 lines of Perl that he's looking to get translated to Python. So if you know anybody for whom that would be an interesting project, reach out to Andrew Dunstan. All right. And then we looked at people who translate the messages. And this is where my speaker notes would have come in really handy because I had the pronunciation for Dennis. I think it's Dennis Berklund. Is that right? Berklund. And most of you have never heard of him. He's certainly never gotten a Postgres release coin, but for over 10 years, he's been translating the messages into Swedish. And the messages are errors, warnings, hints, all sorts of things that users will see when they're running Postgres. And so it's kind of an unsung hero type of thing. And there are over 11,000 messages that we're talking about, but they don't all change in every release. And the estimate out there that people guesstimated with me is that maybe approximately about 1,000 of them changed in this release. And I could ask Alvaro to see if he knows a more precise number. But there are a lot of people involved, and I listed them here, who worked on message translations for Postgres 18, and they deserve a coffee. They deserve a beer as well. And if you're interested in translating or finding more or helping out with Postgres 19, you can go to that URL in the bottom right, babel.postgres.org. All right. Did you know the press release gets translated too into 15 languages? So I took the Thai, the background that you see on the right is the Thai translation of the Postgres 18 press release. And those are all the people who worked on translations of it. And I just wanted to give a shout out to them as well, because that matters. one of the things Jonathan Katz says about the press release, and I think he's the de facto leader for the press release creation, is that it's the bridge between users and the release notes. And the release notes are super crazy important and full of all sorts of detail, and Bruce knows a lot about that because he's in the center of the creation of those every release. Bruce Momjian, I mean, for the video. But these are the people who were involved in the creation of the press release in Postgres 18, so I wanted to say thank you to them as well. And then packaging. So Christoph Berg and Devrim Gunduz do a ton of work, and it's a ginormous task to generate packages for Postgres. And my speaker notes would tell me exactly how many packages were built during the time frame, and I don't remember the number off the tip of my tongue. But when I write a blog post about this, I will be sure to include that type of data. But Christoph focuses on Debian and Ubuntu, and Devrim focuses on the RPM packages, and it is potentially unappreciated work, but something that everybody relies on. And then there's the sysadmin team. Postgres is famous for not relying on other things in the cloud or other organizations to host and maintain all of the content of the project. But that means somebody's got to carry the pager and somebody's got to manage the servers. And so this group of people listed here are the people on the sysadmin team that do that work. And then I took a screenshot of a talk that Magnus Hagander gave at PGConf.dev earlier this year, where he talked about those hidden parts of the Postgres project. And so if you want to find out more, and the URLs of all the different servers that these folks maintain are listed on the slide as well. So they deserve coffee and beer too. And then release notes are a lot of work. And I didn't have time to track down all the names of the people involved in generating them. So my apologies, Bruce. But I did track down that there were 146 emails on the thread that was used to, collaborate on the release notes. And you can see from the screenshots that there's a lot of there and a lot of details. I already talked about mailing list activity during the 15-month time frame on PGSQL hackers, but this is data that Magnus Hagander pulled. You can also look at docs in general and bugs in this time frame. And this is great. 35,000 is a lot, but we started to wonder, well, what are the trends? How does this compare to the past? So Tomasz Vondra, he went and pulled all the data from the beginning of time to answer the question, is mailing list activity going up or going down? And these two mailing lists that we're looking at here, the blue is PGSQL hackers, the orange is PGSQL committers, and you can see there's still a lot of healthy conversation going on those two mailing lists. And yeah, you might say, oh, but 2025 is down. Well, it's down because the year's not over yet, so I expect it to come back up. So don't misinterpret that one. This is as of the 15th of October. But there are other less active mailing lists, so we looked at the trend data for that as well. And I would argue one of the reasons why some of these, like the advocacy, the admin, the performance, the general, the www, SQL, all these mailing lists are probably down because there are other places for people to collaborate and ask questions and things. So now we're going to go into those who share expertise. Someone used to tell me how many minutes I have left, so I know how fast to go. But I looked at Planet Postgres, and there's a lot of blogs still being syndicated to Planet Postgres every month. Now, if you don't already subscribe to Planet Postgres, you should, because there's a lot of great, good content being shared there by developers and engineers. And I just want to point out, though, that you can only syndicate things to Planet Postgres that are predominantly open source project focused. And there are a lot of really useful blogs that get published about commercial offerings or about some of the hyperscaler managed database service offerings. And people who use those services, they need to see those blogs too. And so I'm just pointing out there's even more blog posts on Postgres that are out there than what you see on Planet Postgres. But there were like more than 950 posts on Planet in this time frame from more than 150 people. And so I took just the people who were the most prolific, and you can see their names on this slide. And Flora, your name is on the slide, on the right. On the right, so you published, yeah, you need to, and these are people who publish 11 posts or more in this time frame. And then there's podcasts. Some people contribute to Postgres by producing and hosting podcasts. And so I wanted to give a shout out to these. Obviously, I think about a podcast at least once a month, so it is something that is in my vocabulary. But Preston Jameson has been doing the Scaling Postgres podcast for a long time. He's got over 380 lifetime episodes. There were 64 new episodes in this release time frame, and that's called Scaling Postgres. And then Postgres FM, 161 lifetime episodes already, 57 new in time frame. And that's run by Michael Christophides and Nikolai Samokolov. And then I'm the host on Talking Postgres. My co-producer is Aaron Wisling, and we did 15 new episodes. And we're up to, coming up on our 33rd, which is really, really cool. Didn't expect to be a podcaster. Yeah, and the most recent guest for episode 32 is sitting right there, Boris Mejias. And it's a fascinating episode if you haven't listened to it yet. All right. So then we looked at conferences and where the 40 conferences were, because remember, I love maps. We limited ourselves to conferences that were listed on PostgreSQL.org. I think I made one exception, which was PostgreSQL Japan, but that's because they did list their 2025 one on PostgreSQL.org, and I rationalized my way into that one. Includes 2 virtual conferences, POSET, an event for Postgres, and PostGIS Day. 2024, and it's in that same V18 timeframe. I did not include, even if you listed on PostgreSQL.org, if your website goes away at the end of the conference, I couldn't get the scheduled data. I couldn't get the speaker data. So PASS was excluded for that reason. And then we discovered some other conferences, but they were not listed on PostgreSQL.org, so we didn't include them. So these are the 40 that we looked at. I thought it was pretty cool. And oh, it's bigger. Last year, same criteria, we only had 29. So there are a whole bunch of new conferences, brand new, first time ever this year. Like CERN is one of them, Napoli is one of them. I'm doing this from memory. Mexico was another one. Brazil, well, they had Brazil in years past, but they hadn't had it for a number of years, and so on and so on. So then we looked at speakers, and there were 659 speakers who gave over 1,000 talks at these 40 conferences. Vast majority of people only gave 1 talk, and then there are these 19 super prolific people who gave 8 or more talks, some of them who are sitting in this room. Now, of those 1,036 talks, some of them are lightning talks, which I think matter. Because, yeah, you're just giving a talk for 5 minutes, but it's actually a lot harder to give a 5-minute talk. It takes a lot more editing to get your message and your story tight, and of course you're reaching a lot more people. There were probably more lightning talks. A lot of conferences do not publish that on their schedule page. So it's super helpful when a conference does do that, even if it doesn't happen until the day after the conference. And then we were able to grab that data. So here are the 19 prolific speakers who gave 8 or more talks. Some of you are on this list. Again, I put your companies, because in many cases, not all, but many, your company probably paid for you to go and give those talks. Big thank you to all these speakers who share their love of Postgres and their expertise with the rest of us. There are also some new books that got published in this time frame. I see at least one of the authors sitting in the room. Yes, right there. So Aline Pia published a new book called Decode Postgres. And then Jimmy Angelikos is here. If you meet him, be sure to congratulate him. Buy him a coffee, buy him a beer. Tell him how much you like the book if you've already read it. And then Ryan Booz, Grant Fritchie, Hans-Jürgen Schoenig, and Andrew Atkinson. And all of these are listed on the Postgres books page that you can find online. All right, and then I just want to give a shout out to the Postgres Weekly newsletter. How many of you already subscribe to this? Cool. It's not an official part of the project, and he includes both open source and technology as well as commercial links in the newsletter, but it's really, really useful. And I love his editorial tone of voice that he uses. He doesn't just cut and paste from whatever the thing is and use the other person's voice. He shares his opinion. They have over 17,000 active subscribers. And in this time period, there were like 57 new issues with 21 unique sponsors. A lot of sponsors come back and repeat that sponsorship over and over again. And I also thought I'd give a shout out. He came on the podcast Talking Postgres as a guest, talked about 12 years of Postgres Weekly. All right, Andreas Scherbaum creates this awesome thing, Postgres Person of the Week, and these 30 people took the time to contribute written interviews that got published in this time frame. So shout out to them for sharing their stories and what they like about Postgres, what they're working on. I think it makes it, for a newcomer who's going and trying to find out more about people in the community, this is really, really useful. And I put a QR code there for anyone who wants to go check it out. So now we're going to move on to people who organize places for knowledge sharing. And this is a picture from PG Day Lowlands last year. I just thought it was a beautiful conference picture. But these are the people who served on organizing teams across the Postgres events. Only 35 of the 40 conferences, because in a few cases, people did not publish their organizing teams. If you have a star next to your name, it means you served on 3 or more organizing teams in the data that we pulled. So these folks, it's a lot of work to organize an event. So big thank you to them. And when we looked at the distribution, there were 13 people who served on 3 or more organizing teams, and those are the ones who have stars next to their names here. And then we looked at talk selection teams. These are the people who review all the talk proposals in the CFP. It's a lot of work, and I know this because I've served on a bunch, and you try really hard to be fair and to be thorough and to do a good job. And the people with stars next to their names served on 3 or 4 talk selection teams in this time period. Also just 35 of 40. But a different set of 35 or 40, because there are some conferences where they publish the organizing team but not the talk selection team, or vice versa. Go figure. All right, so then we looked at user groups. Now this was really hard, but we looked at all the user groups that are listed on the PostgreSQL.org user group page, and then we went to the official Postgres event calendar. We found one more, and we added that. And then we went and pulled, which was a little hard because Meetup went down this week because there was some big outage, but we pulled the number of members in each, so that's the number in the top left, and then after the slash is the number of meetings that they had in this time frame. We did not include any meetups that were not active. They didn't have a single meeting in the time frame. So what you can see from this, though, is there's a lot happening. And if I add up, which I have in the speaker notes, all of the members across all of these 48 meetups, there's a lot of people paying attention and participating, which is pretty cool. Then there are these things called dev meetings. So I want to say thank you to Daniel and Jonathan and Melanie and Noah and Peter. Twice a year, usually at FOSDEM and PGConf.dev, they organize these developer meetings that they're invitation only. It's a lot of the committers and some of the major contributors as well who are going to be there. And this is where conflicts get resolved, the future gets discussed. There's a lot of important interpersonal collaboration that happens in these meetings. It's usually a half day. And there's organization work that happens there. And then in my abstract, I promised I'd mention this conference called PGConf.dev. That has happened for 2 years now. It's kind of like the next generation of what used to be known as PGCon. PGCon used to happen every year in Ottawa. PGConf.dev is moving around. And the first year it was in Vancouver. This year it was in Montreal. Next year it'll be in Vancouver again. But I have a great picture, because I took the photo, of the organizers on the bottom left. And on the bottom right, I also took the photos. There's a cool skateboard picture that's meant to Thomas Monroe brings it with him to conferences. It's meant to represent the human element of this and the whole vibe of this conference. And there's an unconference on the last day. So that's Nathan Bossart, one of the Postgres committers, with all of the Post-its up there helping to prioritize and facilitate, like, what are the unconference sessions going to be. But this is where the next release always begins, PGConf.dev. And there's decisions that get made, debates that hopefully get resolved, and the next generation of contributors gets nurtured. There are users who attend. So if you're a user and you want to go, you should go. The talks are super useful. But there's also a lot of contributors and developers who are there as well to start working on the next release and refuel, reconnect. And there's this great, if you want to go look at the slides later, we don't have time for me to read the whole quote, which was my original intention. But this is what Melanie Plageman, one of the organizers, had to say about it. And there is this desire to connect with people on a human level and focus, try to rally support for what you want to do in the next release. And also, if you know someone's going to try to block it because they think it's a bad idea, to talk to them and figure out why. And maybe you can get them to reconsider. So the other thing that I think is really cool about this is they're doing a lot of experimentation. Like each year, let's try this, let's try that. Let's try to create a new way for people to collaborate and learn from each other. And then there's a new mentoring program that Robert Haas started in this time frame. It was actually inspired by conversations at PGConf.dev 2024 in Vancouver. And he's currently the second cohort of mentors is happening. So there's obviously mentors and mentees. And he created a Discord server, and there's over 1,000 people on this Discord server. And the Discord server was originally titled something with mentoring in the name. But then all the hackers started coming on there and having conversations about Postgres hacking there, so he renamed it, and it's now like PostgreSQL hacking is the name of the Discord. And one of the things that, in addition to those cohorts of mentors and mentees, he's also got these monthly hacking workshops that people can sign up for in advance. If you sign up, you must go. He doesn't like people who, you know, you don't want to plan for something and do all the work and then get there and nobody's at the party. So he encourages everyone to be serious about their signups. But they'll watch a talk and discuss and collaborate. And what's really cool, according to Robert Haas, who hosts these, is that all of these people, their talks were discussed in these workshops, and they came and participated and helped to facilitate, and that was amazing, with the exception of Andy Pavlo. But all the rest of the people on this list participated in it, which I think made the sessions even more useful. Then there's Google's Summer of Code, and that's something that Pavlo Golob helped me get details for. But there was participants and mentors. We had the Summer of Code from 2024 and this year, both in time frame. Pavlo Golob and Jesper Peterson helped to organize it. And if there's one call to action, Pavlo would have you know that they need more mentors. The more mentors they have, the more mentees they can have. And the more mentees they can have, the more future contributors we have. And that's the wrong slide, so I'm moving on. So financial contributors, I thought this was really interesting. These are the 27 companies who sponsored the Postgres conferences that we were looking at. Now, not everybody publishes their sponsorship prospectus, so we only had the data for 33 of 40 companies. And we looked at anybody who gave 11,000 euros or more in total over the course of 15 months. So this is how it stacked out, which I thought was pretty cool. And then we took all the logos from all sponsorships of conferences, so it should say conference sponsorships. That's what it will say in my published slides. This is all in descending order. So the people in the top row were the ones who contributed the most in total. And these are the 12 companies who employed the 31 committers. So shout out to these companies for supporting the Postgres project. And if you want to donate to nonprofits, I put QR codes on here, so feel free to give. And there's server sponsors too. And these are people who have provided those servers that the sysadmin team relies on for Postgres infrastructure. And so I want to say thank you to those companies. So here's the important thing that I really want to get to. We covered all the chapters in this mind map. Hopefully you have more ideas about how to contribute, how to get a coin, who to buy a beer or a coffee for, and why we should recognize people for their work. 40 years later, my parents still have their Ocean State Marathon certificates on the wall in their house. 40 years later, after running a marathon. These medals matter, and I predict that 40 years from now, someone who gets one of those major contributor, significant contributor coins, or the new Postgres 18 release coin, will still have it and may talk to their grandchildren about this project and what their work involved. So for all of you who contributed, I say thank you, and a special thank you to Christoph and Joe and Melanie for the work they're doing to improve the methodologies being used to recognize contributors and incenting more contributions in the project. And also shout out to the people behind Postgres Contrib, which you can subscribe to, and if you follow Planet Postgres, you'll see their posts. They're really frequent, and they're trying to give shout outs to people who are contributing to Postgres in lots of different ways. And I have a few ideas, which is if you work on conferences, add volunteers to your website. Make it a matter of public record, even if you don't do it until the week after the conference. Same with lightning talk speakers as well. Maybe we should recognize the message translators as code and doc contributors. Maybe Dennis Björklund and all the other translators deserve a Postgres 18 release coin. And obviously, buy someone a beer, say thank you, show appreciation, and just know that there's lots of different types of contributions that add value to a healthy open source project. Hopefully some of those metrics that you've not seen before, like cycle time or retention rate of first-time code authors, will stick with you. You kind of think about those. You all know the scope of work involved is ginormous. And I think what Melanie and Joe and Christoph are doing is really important. And so with that, I say thank you. I don't think I have time to talk to you about any of these. I'm probably out. Yeah, so I was trying to tell you about the podcast, about how Posette's dates are announced for next year. If you come to the Microsoft booth, there is some socks that we can give you. And then this is the survey link that the conference organizers asked me to put up if you want to give feedback about the talk. Just skip over the technical difficulties in the beginning. We can forget about those. And thank you for being here and for spending this time with me today. Enjoy the conference.